Yo, what is up, everybody? It is me, your boy TPT, not coming at you live and not from Twitch TV. Hope you guys are all having a fantastic day today. Today, we are going to be doing a trade guide for beginners. So, I'm sure, everyone, I would say most people at least have a bit of a basic level of understanding of trade. So I'm not really going to be covering all the in-depth parts. This is more for just people who are new to the game. They're not really sure how it works because realistically, the trade map mode does look quite intimidating for a new player. You've got all these icons here, different colors, arrows going everywhere, lots and lots of numbers, and I figured I would just try and break it down as simple as possible. And just really, to try and help out those newer players to wrap their heads around it. So, there's a couple things we're going to be covering, and I think we just want to jump into it. Now, first of all, we're going to start off with, obviously, the trade nodes. As you can see, the entire world, well, obviously we can't see all of it, so if we just, sorry, I was setting up a bit beforehand, but if we just look around, you can see that every single colonized and uncolonized province in the world is assigned a color, representing the trade node that it is a part of. Now, as I'm playing in Bengal, the important node for me, my home node as it's called, is Bengal. Now, it's pretty easy to find your first home node, and you can move this at a later date, but it will always be the same province that your capital is located in. As you can see here, it is both our capital and our main trade city, meaning that this is our home node. If you wanted to move it, it's pretty simple. You just have to, spend 200 Diplo points and use this button here. Although obviously we can't because we're technically in a war right now. It costs 200 Diplo, and it will move your home node to the node that province is in. So, as I said, this is our home node, so this is where the majority of our trade income is going to be coming from. So as you can see, we have a very large percentage here. If you just click, so if you go to your trade map mode and you just click on this here, you'll see there's a whole bunch of numbers here. Now, these numbers, they're relatively simple once you get the hang of it. So the first one up here, this is our trade power. So this is how much power we have in this node. And as you can see, there's a whole bunch of, bits and pieces there, but it's pretty simple once you get down to it. So there's a few ways to get it. You can get it from provinces, from trade ships, as well as trade policy and a few other things. So we're going to keep it nice and simple. Like I said, so the first one that you get it from is provinces. So each province has a trade power, which you can see down here. Now, the trade power, the base trade power, is calculated by the development of the province. As you can see, the trade power here is 2.0, and it's a 10 dev province. And here, the base is 2.2, and it's an 11 dev province. So so each dev is worth 0.2 trade power as a base. Now, there are a couple exceptions to this. That being the provinces with centers of trade. Now, there's 3 levels of centers of trade. You've got your level 1, your level 2, and I don't know if we've got any around here, but you've also got the level 3, which is the world port. Yes, levels 3 here. So each of these give the province a base trade power of increasing amounts. So as you can see here, when you think, oh, what this one, okay, so that one's 10, so that's worth 2. Okay, so that one's 2.2. So if you calculate, you think, oh, well, this one would have, what's that? 3.6 possibly? No, because it's got a trade center on it. So it gives it an additional plus 10 base trade power before any modifiers, which we probably won't cover too in depth, but before any modifiers, it gives it a plus 10 base trade power. So these are really good to pick up in nodes that you want to secure the trade power of. They cost a bit of money to upgrade, and you can only get so many of these level 3 ones dependent on how many merchants you have. Each merchant gives you 1 level 3 center of trade that you can make. So that's basically how the trade power in the provinces work. The next one is pretty simple. It is the light ships. So if you have a port and you have the ability to create naval units, you'll see this one right here, a light ship. It costs 20 gold. It's pretty cheap maintenance, and you can build, you can build them on your coastal ports. Now, you can see the number here of 25. That means we have 25 of these light trade ships protecting our trade, and it also shows it down here as well. Now, each trade ship, if you look along here, each trade ship actually gives this much base trade power. Again, that's before modifiers, but it gives so these are level 2. The level 1s, so as you upgrade them in technology, if we go to the technology tree, you'll see that you have multiple versions of these. You have barks, caravels, early frigates, heavy frigates, and great frigates. So the barks start off by providing 2 trade power each, and then the caravels have 2.5, and it just increases incrementally as you upgrade those ships. So if you want to get more trade power in a node, an option is by building some trade ships. Now, the next one is the main trade city, which, as we just mentioned earlier, that is just this modifier here. So you get a base of +5 in this node because it's your home node and your main trade city is located here. The next one is the merchant presence. So as you can see, we've actually got a merchant, which is shown by this little icon here. We have 6 merchants maximum, 0 out of 6 because we've taken trade ideas, which again, we'll get into in a bit later. But a merchant also provides a base of 2 trade power, as well as if you have the right DLC, it also gives you option to the trading policy. Realistically, you don't need to worry about this too much. If you're new, the only two ones that I would focus on knowing is the maximize profit and the propagate religion. So the first one is maximize profit, which just gives you basically 5% extra trade power from the base. And the propagate religion, which is essentially, if we swap over to, what's a good example? If we swap over to Siak, hopefully they've got a merchant here. Nah, they don't have a merchant here, but if you look, if you have over 50% trade power in this node, and you have a merchant there, and the dominant religion is Sunni, so you can only do this if you're Sunni. If you have the majority there, then you can actually use this propagate religion, which basically acts like a center of reformation, except it's for the Sunni religion, and it'll passively convert these provinces that aren't Sunni. Now, if you don't know what centers of religion are, we will get into those in the future when we discuss how religion works. Now, if we just want to swap back over to Bengal. So that's how you get the base trade power, as you can see here. And then there's the transfers from traders downstream. That is, it can get a bit complicated, but to put it simply, we will now explain how the downstream and upstreams systems work. Okay, so if you look in this little Bengal node here, you'll see there's arrows pointing in this way, and in this way, and you can see arrows pointing out here and out here. So this is the trade stream. Okay, so as you can see here, it says transfer some traders downstream. So if we follow down this stream long across it, we'll get to, what's this one? Oh, we found another trade center. This one is the Caravan node. And if we look here, we do actually have a province in the Caravan node. So a percentage, about 15% of the province trade value, like the provincial trade value, will be sent upstream from this one back into here. So if, say for example, Caravan was our home node, we would actually have a percentage of the trade value of Bengal, and we could use that trade to pull it down into Caravan. Now, how do you pull trade, you may ask? Well, this is where the merchant comes in handy as well. So we can't do it here because this is our main trade city. So instead, we'll follow this node upwards. We'll follow it upwards, 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 up. And look at that, we found another trade node, and this one is Lhasa. So, as you can see here, there is 2 options to send a merchant. So, you can either collect from trade or transfer trade power. Now, collecting from trade, we'll get into that a little bit more, but because this node is upstream from us, it's normally not a good idea to collect the trade. So instead, what you do is you transfer the trade power. Essentially, what that means is we're going to be dragging this trade power down through here, and all the money that comes with it down through here into the Bengal node. And as you can see, if you look here, okay, this is the value of the trade node in ducats. So, in how much money is this trade node worth? Well, you've got the local, which we'll cover a bit more in detail in a second. You've got the incoming, the outgoing, and the total. So, as you can see here, so we've pulled this much trade down from here into the Bengal node. And as you can see, it says 1.21 ducats. And if we look at the Lhasa, there it is, 1.21 ducats. So, means we're dragging that much money down from Lhasa into Bengal. And other countries are doing the same to our trade node. As you can see here, we've got 3.96 being pulled out of Bengal into the Doab node. So we are losing a little bit of trade value as well, unfortunately. So that is basically, so you've got your upstream nodes and your downstream nodes. Normally, you always want to be pulling from these upstream nodes into your downstream nodes, and that's where the transfer from traders downstream comes in handy. Now, just real quick, you may be seeing we've got an additional modifier, trade power from Kathmandu. What is that? Well, because Kathmandu is our vassal, we've actually enabled what's called the divert trade. So 100% of the trade power that Kathmandu has in Lhasa goes directly to us, which we can then get our merchant to use and pull even more money from Lhasa into Bengal. And that way, this node becomes even richer. So, you may be asking, so well, we've covered these two, but what are these two numbers right here? Well, as you can see here, the total value in the trade node is 26.67 ducats. And look, that one matches up to that one right there. Now, to find this 47, we've actually got to go down a little bit over to this number here. So if we look, the Merchants of Bengal collects 26.42 ducats from this trade node. Out of this, they managed to create an income of 47.83 ducats to the state. Now you may be asking, wait a second, how is 26.42 becoming 47.83? Well, that's because of what's called the trade efficiency. So if we go to our trade screen, we've got our trade efficiency right there. Okay. So as you can see, we've got some from technology, we've got some reforms, Diplotech, and a bunch of other modifiers. So simply said, with how much, so the money we get from this, the 26.42 of that, we multiply it by 171%, and that is how much money the merchant collects from that trade node. Now, because it's our main city, you've got to keep in mind that you don't actually need a merchant here. It's just that if it's a contested node, so if there's other people trying to get on the node, the merchant helps us secure more trade power. So if you've already got a full monopoly on the node, you don't need to keep a merchant there. And instead, you can use the merchant to pull from these other trade nodes downstream into Bengal. Now, here comes another important bit here. So there's two types of trade nodes. You've got your coastal trade nodes and you've got your inland trade nodes. The coastal trade nodes, it's pretty self-explanatory. They have coastline in them, so you can use your boats. The inland standards of trade don't have a boat. As you can see here, there's no icon to put a boat in the Burma node. So instead, we get something called Caravan power. Now, so if we hover over onto here, we see, oh, okay, we got our provinces, yeah, we got our merchant, yeah. Then we've got Caravan power. Caravan power essentially means that when you have a merchant stationed in this node, you get a significant bonus of 62.5 Caravan power, meaning that because this is an inland node, we get a whole bunch of extra trade power with which to pull from this node to Bengal, and it gives us even more money. So if we look, okay, now this is a reason, now here we get to the reason why trade can make you so much money, okay? So if we look upstream from Burma, we have the Chengdu node, and we have a merchant in this node as well. And as you can see, we got quite a bit of trade power because of our Caravan power. And we're pulling this 2.35 ducats from Chengdu into Burma. Now, if we look at the incoming, okay, it says Chengdu 2.35. And then in brackets, it's got this added value plus 0.29. What does that mean, you ask? Well, when you pull income from one trade node to the next, it doesn't just give you that 2.35 ducats, it actually adds value. It adds a multiplier to it. So you get a multiplier of that trade value. So instead of so we pull 2.35 ducats, and of that, it actually becomes 2.64. Okay. So that means that this node gets an extra 2.64 ducats. And then, if you do it again, well, now we're pulling 5.26 ducats into Bengal. And if we look here, 5.26 ducats gets an add value of 0.55. So you're pulling even more money into the Bengal node. So as you can imagine, if you set up a long enough chain, you can essentially cause a multiplier to just continue, because if you have a small number, say you've only got 5 ducats, well, if you add, times 1.1, you get 5.5. Then if you times 1.1 again, you get 6.05. And then you times it by 1.1 again, you get, and it keeps on adding up. It multiplies till it reaches an exponential value. And that is why trade is so valuable. Because the more you pull in, the higher the numbers become. So if you have a node that's quite downstream, if you just conquer up this way, if you keep on going, actually no, we'll go that way, because that's actually a node. That's not a very good one. So if we go, okay, so Bengal, all right, then we go to Malacca, okay, so we're pulling from there. Then say we go up here, as you can see, go up to Hangzhou, okay, that's even more. And then if we pull it from Nippon, okay. Then if we pull it from the Polynesian Charter, okay, and see, as you can pull more and more trade downstream, and it just becomes a huge unstoppable income. We only are pulling a couple nodes, and we're already making 47.83 ducats. It is 40% of our income, and we are not that heavily focused on trade right now. So as you can imagine, it always, it just keeps on adding up. And because of modifiers like Caravan power and the merger being present and the maximized profit trading policy, it just keeps on adding up. And there's no reason to have your merchants idle unless you can't reach a node. If you can't reach a node that pulls downstream into the node that you're collecting from, you should always just keep on doing it, because every ducat counts. Now, if you want to know if you can reach a node or not, if you go to your trade screen again and you have a trade range value. So if you look here, if we hover over here, it says, oh, the following nodes are outside your trade range, and it gives us a whole bunch. And you can tell when they're outside your node because they'll have this little checkered pattern on them. That means that we can't trade with them because, they're too far away. And you get trade range mostly from, where is it? From your technology. You can see here you get it every couple ticks. And also we get a bit of bonus because we've got trade range, and we have a temporary mission or modifier giving us an additional trade range. And so, the more range you get, the further away you can pull trade from, and the more the multipliers can stack up. Now, you may be asking, but TPT, what if what if I want to collect from a node that isn't my home node? Well, okay, so let's say we collect from, so we've got the Malacca node, we're currently transferring power, okay. So let's say that first of all, we just collect trade from here, right? Let's just wait for the months to tick over, because if you don't know, EU4 is very heavily based around monthly ticks, and the trade the trade screen only updates once every month at the start of the month. Okay, so if we do this, all right, so we're collecting trade here, but wait, we had 25% trade power. Where did it all go? Okay, so this is when some of the modifiers start to come in handy. Okay, now you don't need to see anything else here. Okay, you don't need to look at anything else except for that bottom modifier. Collect from trade not in your main city. Okay, that's the only modifier that is important when I'm talking about this. When you don't collect in a trade node that isn't your home node, when you collect in a trade node that isn't your home node, you lose a massive chunk of your trade power. And on top of that, if you'll notice, the 4 ducats that we were pulling to Bengal, they're not there anymore. And our trade income just went down hugely. We just lost like 10 ducats a month. We just lost like 10 ducats a month from not collecting, from collecting instead of transferring it down. So that's why I say that if you have the option to, you should always transfer and not collect. Because if you collect in a node that isn't your own node, that isn't your home node, you're going to be losing a lot of money. Because again, instead of 25%, you've only got 14%. And that means, okay, so we're making 4 ducats there, but we've lost 10 here, so we still lose 6 ducats overall. Now, again, if you want to move your trade city to Malacca, for example, then you say I have say I have Johor, then I just click the button here and I move my trade city, and that means that would get rid of this modifier for here, and it would instead transfer it over to Bengal. Now, my advice is to never move your trade node upstream from your capital. It should always be going downstream to your capital, or just don't move it at all, depending on how you expand. The last thing is local trade value. So, as you may have guessed, every single province provides local trade value. Now, I'm not going to go too into depth with this, but there's really just like 2 to 3 things you need to know about it. Firstly, the goods produced. The base, we're not going to go into the modifiers, but the base goods produced is 0.2 local goods produced per base production. Then you also got to look over here, and this is the trade good that each province produces. It'll have a value normally between around 2 to 5, with most I would consider around 3 and up to be relatively high value of goods, with things like 3.6 and higher as well if you can find them, like things like gems and the like. Oh, and also coal. Silk is really good. Now there's one exception to this, which is gold. I'll get that in a second. But basically, the trade value for the province is the local goods produced multiplied by this current price for the goods. The one exception, if we look over here, is gold, which doesn't provide any trade value, and instead it just provides its value purely through production, which goes directly to the owner. So it doesn't actually assign any trade value to the node. It is purely straight cash into the hands of whoever owns it. And so, like I said, say for example, we've got a 2 ducat, 2 ducat naval supplies here. We've got 0.6 goods produced. Then we've got our bonuses, which means 0.89. So this trade value is just 2 times by 0.89, and there we go, 1.79, and that money goes into the local trade node, which obviously again then can be moved around, etc. So to cap off the basics of trade for newer players, don't collect outside of your home node. There can be exceptions to this, but realistically, if you're a new player, you don't need to worry about those yet. They come with experience, and as you play longer, you'll eventually start to figure them out. Always use your merchants. Never have lazy merchants. See this? Bad. Don't do it. Always use your merchants. Doesn't matter how, like if you've only got 0.1%. Remember, merchants give trade power, so you can always draw some money in, particularly if you're putting your merchants in the inland nodes. Never a bad idea to put them there, because again, that caravan power, really nice, can really drag a lot of money in those nodes to your home node, which gives you a bit more of that dollarinos. Light ships give you money, so if you're ever not sure what to build, if you don't need a lot of military ships or transports, then just spam out these babies. Spam out these babies like your life depends on it. And better yet, put them in provinces that are highly contested. So if you got like 90% in your home node, don't put them there. Put them in like Malacca, 14%. Say we're transferring, 14%. Boom, slap 50 trade ships there. You will pull, most of that money out of there. Instead of pulling maybe 5 ducats, you will be pulling like 15. The less trade power you have in a province, and the more money in that province, the more valuable it is to send your trade ships there. The last point really is that the more dev a province has, and the higher the price of the goods that it produces, it can, we'll just ignore everything else, but just those 2 factors alone, the more dev, the higher the value, the more relevant the province is in the trade game, and the more likely I would recommend that you take it to increase your trade moolah.